They never intended to let us leave that place. That's the chilling first line of episode 4 from an anonymous podcast called The Missing Stage. The voice is young, thin, and trembling with fear as if echoing from a place that doesn't belong to the present. Just seconds later, there's the sound of metal clashing. Then silence, long, suffocating silence. The episode ends without a single explanation. Within hours, the episode spreads like wildfire across social media, dragging a long, forgotten disappearance from 2006 back into the spotlight. 5 girls, all black high school students, vanished after performing at a community arts event in the small town of Waycross, Georgia. No signs of a struggle, no goodbye messages, no bodies, and in 18 years, not one of them has ever been found. Police closed the case after just 3 weeks, concluding it's likely they ran away voluntarily. But the community didn't believe it. The families didn't believe it. And now an anonymous voice, someone who won't even reveal their name, has reopened a wound that never truly healed. Someone is telling this story again, not through news reports, but through raw, fragmented audio that feels like it's coming straight from the shadows the girls were pulled into. What really happened at that community center that night, and why, after all these years, has every trace remained buried? Tanya Evans never thought she'd become the voice of a community tragedy. She was just an ordinary mother, working part-time at a small accounting office living in an old housing complex on the edge of Waycross. Her husband had passed away when Amaya was only 8, and from then on, Tanya played both mom and dad. Their peaceful days were filled with painting together in the evenings, soft jazz on the radio, and bursts of laughter as Amaya shared stories from school. Amaya Evans, the quiet girl with dreamy eyes and paint, stained hands. She wasn't outgoing like most kids her age, didn't care much for social media or fashion, but could spend hours sketching the worlds inside her head. Amaya once dreamed of attending an art school in Savannah, opening her own gallery, and teaching art to underprivileged children. She was the last person Tanya saw that night, her curly hair half, tied, wearing a purple dress and an excited smile. Waycross is a small town, mostly African American, where generations live side by side. But even here, clear lines were drawn between the freshly painted white homes and the run-down blocks where Tanya lived. When the 5 girls vanished, no national headlines followed. Just a few short lines in the local paper, then silence. Tanya recalls, "We didn't just lose our children. We lost our voice." Back then, the people of Waycross were used to being overlooked. They'd seen disappearances, violence, and injustice swept under the rug by local authorities. But this time, it felt different. These girls were honor students, daughters of respected families, artists with bright futures. There was no reason for them to run away. Yet the searches ended just 3 weeks in. No media pressure, no state-level support. Locals started whispering was something being covered up. Some claimed they saw unfamiliar vehicles near the community center that night. An elderly woman remembered hearing cries near the parking lot, but by the time she looked out, it was pitch black. No one followed up, no one wrote anything down. Conflicting witness accounts were ignored, as if they never existed. Amid all the uncertainty, Tanya kept going to work, kept tidying Amaya's room every weekend, kept the half-finished painting on her daughter's easel untouched. 18 years passed. She learned to live with the emptiness, but never accepted it as final. Waycross has never forgotten that night. When the girls didn't return home after the performance, many people took to the streets searching house to house block to block. But after that night, the town's atmosphere changed, as if something cold and invisible had crept in. Conversations in barbershops, churches, and diners would fall silent at the mention of the missing girls. Some were afraid. Others just felt helpless. 5 families, each with their own story, but bound by the same loss. Aside from Tanya, there was Nia Carter's, familiar young church volunteer whose daughter Layla played lead violin in the youth orchestra. The Barnezisa veteran father and a nurse. Mother lost their second daughter Jasmine, who used to run summer art camps for kids, and the twins from the Rivera family, Black and Latinx, were town favorites for their modern dance and spoken word performances. They were the face of Waycross, future young, creative, unapologetically hopeful. After the disappearance, each family coped in different ways. Some shut their doors and left town, others turned to faith. But all of them faced the same harsh truth: no one was fighting for them. Police didn't reopen the case. Schools held no memorials. Reporters stopped calling. Perhaps the cruelest part was this: not one of the girls ever became a media focus. No cover stories, no widespread search campaigns. A silence blanketed the whole tragedy as if they'd never existed. The pain wasn't just in the loss, but in the erasure, a quiet, relentless form of disappearance. Tanya tried to bring the families together, organizing a few gatherings in the first year, but not everyone wanted to revisit the pain. Some were scared, some were angry, some just broken. By year 3, Tanya was the only one still reprinting faded posters whenever it rained. But silence doesn't mean the truth sleeps. Some of the younger folks in Waycross, the next generation, began digging through old files, setting up online forums, scouring archived newspapers. They asked, how could 5 young black girls vanish during a packed community performance and no one be held accountable? 5 girls. 5 different dreams. So what brought them together that night? It wasn't until the Missing Stage podcast released a series of voice diary entries that a few faint clues began to surface. A hidden voice, memo buried in Jasmine Barnes' old phone, was discovered by her younger brother while cleaning out the garage. In it, Jasmine talked about a mentoring program called Inner Light Fellowship, supposedly run by a nonprofit from Atlanta. We were invited to a weekend retreat near the Okefenokee Forest, she said. They told us it was about finding young black leaders. But then things started to feel off. Details about the retreat were murky. No photos, no official invites. But in Layla's journals and Amaya's sketches, hints emerged. All 5 girls had attended a secret orientation about 3 months before they vanished. A symbol kept showing up: a circle, enclosing a triangle, no explanation, just the initials FL. A group of local college students traced the symbol to a short-lived organization registered in Georgia in 2004, Future Leaders of Light. It was founded by a woman who had once taught art in Waycross before becoming a school counselor. The group's records were shut down in 2007. The same year, the girls disappeared. Tanya once met with the woman who had since moved out of state. They talked in a quiet cafe. When Tanya mentioned the retreat, the woman fell silent for a long time before finally saying, "I just wanted to help them succeed." But then things got out of control. The deeper Tanya looked, the more unsettling the pattern became. The girls shared more than artistic talent. They all showed signs of stress before disappearing: sleeplessness, mood changes, vague comments about mentor pressure. The fragments pointed in one direction: someone had infiltrated their lives under the promise of opportunity and quietly taken control. If these fragments are true, then the disappearance wasn't an accident. It was the outcome of a carefully orchestrated selection process. On the night of May 13, 2006, the Waycross Community Center glowed with warm yellow lights, strands of string lights wrapped around the railings, and a speaker system playing classic jazz music Tanya still remembers. The annual art showcase had always been a town tradition, bringing together teachers, parents, students, even the elderly who lived alone. But that year's event felt even more special. It was the first time a senior spotlight segment was introduced, and on the performance list were 5 names: Amaya, Layla, Jasmine, and the Rivera twins. Tanya arrived early to help set up chairs. She remembers Amaya winking at her, whispering, "Don't record me," while talking. "Okay." The girls stood next to Jasmine, both wearing black t-shirts and jeans, simple yet striking with their confidence. Each brought a prop. Amaya had a half-finished painting. Layla carried her violin. Jasmine held a photo board, and the Rivera sisters wore oversized headphones, clearly preparing for a spoken word act. The show went smoothly. Every act was met with applause echoing through the small hall. The final performance, a collaborative piece by the 5 girls, was the highlight of the night. They stood in a circle on stage, each delivering a short monologue titled, "The Woman I Want to Become." Layla ended with the line, "I want to be the last to put out the fire, not the first to run." The crowd rose in ovation. Tanya teared up. She felt her daughter was touching something far bigger than any of them realized. After the show, the audience began to trickle out. Some parents stayed behind to take photos and chat. Tanya had to leave early for a morning shift, so she just gave Amaya a hug and reminded her, "Call me when you're heading home." Amaya nodded. That was the last time Tanya saw her daughter. According to the investigation, the 5 girls were seen leaving the stage area at 10:24 p. captured by an outdoor security camera. They didn't get into anyone's car. They didn't head home. Instead, they walked around the back toward the old baseball field, down a dim path leading to an auxiliary activity room often used for prop storage or training sessions. From that point forward, no camera captured them again. No one remembered seeing them leave. No signs of struggle. No calls for help. Only one strange detail at exactly 10:47 p.m. All 5 girls' phones went offline at once, either powered down or switched to airplane mode simultaneously. One parent reported seeing a tall man wearing a baseball cap standing near the field around 10:30, but when questioned later, he changed his story. Maybe I mistook him for security. A teacher recalled seeing a light on in the auxiliary room after 10:45, even though it was supposed to be locked. No one checked. The next morning, Tanya realized Amaya hadn't come home. She called every friend. No one knew anything. She contacted the police, who dismissed her, saying they probably just stayed out late. It wasn't until that afternoon, when 4 more families reported their daughters missing, that the police opened a case. But by then, the trail had already gone cold. When the 5 families gathered at the Waycross police station to file reports, the response wasn't what they expected. An officer took their statements and said plainly, "They're probably hanging out somewhere. It's graduation season." Tanya recalls I looked him dead in the eye and said, "My daughter has never spent a night out without telling me. We're not the kind of people from those rumors." He just shrugged. In the first 48 hours, the critical window for locating missing persons, there were no phone traces, no surveillance reviews, no press briefings. Police posted a basic notice online with outdated photos of the girls. Friends, family, and volunteers had to take the search into their own hands, printing flyers, knocking on doors, even paying for search dogs out of pocket. When local reporters asked questions, the police chief said, "There's no clear evidence that they're in danger." That one sentence sparked outrage. A local pastor said during a vigil, if 5 white kids had gone missing at once in a wealthy neighborhood, would they still say it's not dangerous? Waycross began to rise up. A silent march was organized, led by mothers holding photos of their daughters, their mouths covered with black tape. Across their chests, the words in white "M," still waiting to be heard. High schoolers walked out of class. Teachers, nurses, elders, all stood with them. Under public pressure, police promised to expand the investigation, but soon everything faded again. No warrants, no deep questioning. Whispers started that some town officials had ties to the organization that sponsored the event, the one that brought in guest mentors from out of town, bypassing school screening. Online, the story spread rapidly, especially within the Black community on Twitter and in Facebook groups. The hashtag #Waycross5 became a rallying cry. Activists from Atlanta, Chicago, and elsewhere traveled to the town, holding workshops and pushing national media to cover the case. But major outlets stayed silent. No CNN, no NBC. One journalist from The Atlantic revealed, "They told me the story lacked data, but we all knew it's because the victims weren't white." Meanwhile, Tanya and the other families lived between hope and heartbreak. Every unknown number tightened their chest. Every rumor spread like wildfire, only to fade away. They learned to keep moving, but never let go. Tanya kept a large map pinned in her living room, marking every search site, every witness interviewed. She remained convinced something had been hidden. A powerful hand had stopped the truth from surfacing. And if anyone did know what happened that night, they were being shielded by a system built on silence. In the early days after the disappearance gained online attention, conflicting accounts began to surface. A woman named Gloria, who lived across from the community center, claimed she saw a silver truck parked near the ball field after 11 p.m., its headlights still on. "I remember because it was huge and out of place. No one around here drives," that she said. When asked why she didn't report it, Gloria hesitated. "I got fined once for a false report, so this time I stayed quiet." A security worker named Lester initially said he didn't see anything unusual, but when pressed, admitted he heard a loud clanging noise behind the practice room like metal hitting concrete. Asked why he didn't check it out, Lester said, "I thought it was the kids moving props." This raised concerns about a surveillance outage in the rear area from 10:40 to 11:15, aligning with the suspected time frame. Some classmates of the girls recalled seeing a white man around 40 present during the Wednesday rehearsal. He wasn't a teacher, wore no ID, but stood with a group of guest mentors from Atlanta. They couldn't remember his name, just that he always carried a notebook and never made eye contact. When that group was later questioned, they denied knowing anyone who matched the description. A girl named Keisha took art classes with Amaya shared that just days before the show, Amaya confided saying she didn't feel safe around one of the men who kept staring at us during practice. Amaya added, "I didn't tell my mom she'd worry too much." Keisha couldn't identify the man, and police never formally recorded her statement. These scattered accounts began to paint a disturbing picture, but no one connected the dots. The case file lacked cohesion, and any attempt to dig deeper was dismissed as conspiracy theory. Mainstream media ignored it, police refused to comment. But within the community, suspicion grew. Was someone actively covering up the truth? And if so, did they have the power to silence everyone? As suspicion spread through the community, one thing became painfully clear. Too many warning signs had been ignored from the start. Tanya recalled a chilling moment. Just a week before the showcase, Amaya had asked her, "If someone disappears in the night, how do people know where to look?" At the time, Tanya thought her daughter was imagining a theater scene. But after the disappearance, that question haunted her like a missed omen. An art teacher, Ms. Wren, who had guided the girls' performance later, revealed that during the final rehearsal, there was a tense exchange between Layla and an older man, Salt, and Pepper hair leather shoes, carrying a black briefcase. He was one of the guest mentors, Miss Wren said. Layla told him not to touch their props. "I didn't catch everything, but the mood was clearly tense." Wren reported it to the police, but it was never included in the official investigation file. Meanwhile, the community center's aging security camera system experienced technical failure in 3 locations on the very night of the showcase. A volunteer electrician later inspected the site and found the signal cables in those areas had been bent and severed, as if someone had intentionally disconnected them, but without any visible signs of external tampering. When he told the police the electrician, Marvin, was brushed off, they said maybe it was rats. But 3 cameras failing simultaneously in key positions, Marvin didn't buy it. That night also held another strange anomaly. One of the auxiliary rooms had been booked for a private internal use at 8 p.m. sim, according to a handwritten entry in the sign in log, but no one ever claimed responsibility. Normally, every booking had a name. This one simply read, Studio 3 Private Prep, in messy handwriting. After the incident, the page disappeared from the office records. A volunteer named Joni remembered seeing it, but when she returned with Tanya on Monday morning, the logbook was gone. While police maintained there were no leads, a few employees at the community center quietly left their jobs in the weeks following the disappearance. Among them was an audio technician named Eric, assigned to work the night of the showcase. Tanya tried contacting him, but no one knew where he'd gone. When neighbors were asked, they said Eric had moved out in the middle of the night without notice. These details, scattered unconnected, began to reveal a troubling pattern. A group of people appeared to have inside knowledge. The schedule was altered from within, cameras disabled precisely where needed, witnesses either ignored or mysteriously vanished. Tanya, with the help of a few media students and amateur engineers in town, began reconstructing a timeline. They created a digital map marking camera positions, the last known locations of the girls, and every witness account. A strange void appeared right behind the center where cameras had gone dark, and near the room marked private prep. The picture became sharper. This wasn't random. Someone had planned it, and they didn't act alone. As the team lined up their timeline with available data, glaring contradictions emerged between witness statements and official records. Take Gloria, for example, the woman who reported seeing a silver truck near the field. Her statement was logged as a false report due to misidentified headlights. But Tanya's team found footage from a nearby doorbell camera capturing a loud engine at exactly 10:49 p.m. and a large truck silhouette reflected in a car mirror across the street. They enhanced the clip and compared it to a Ford E350. It was nearly identical. Another inconsistency involved Guard Lester's report about hearing a loud crash behind the auxiliary room, officially dismissed as noise from a cleanup crew. But a 10th grade student who had been backstage that night posted a selfie to Tumblr at 10:35 with the caption, "Waiting to clean up, but no one's opened the room yet." There was no crew at that time. The room booking for Studio 3 presented more problems. Both Tanya and Joni had seen the handwritten entry. But when they asked to review the reception desk footage for confirmation, they were told the recording for May 13th had been auto-deleted due to storage overflow. Tanya later confirmed that the system was configured to retain footage for a minimum of 14 days. The implication was clear: someone had accessed and manually deleted the files. There were other missing reports too. Keisha, the girl who once told Tanya that Amaya had expressed fear of a man watching her during rehearsals, had no statement on file. When Tanya's group asked about it, the police said no one by that name ever gave a statement. But Keisha still had the original message she'd sent to the lead officer, complete with timestamp date and red receipt. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became this was just a case of neglect. It was a web of contradictions that seemed deliberately concealed. Every time they got close to an answer, a door slammed shut. Witnesses disappeared. Data was erased. Statements were dismissed as unreliable. Tanya couldn't shake the feeling there was a wall surrounding this case, and whoever was behind that wall was willing to do whatever it took to keep it standing. As the group shared their findings online, through blogs and community Twitter threads, anonymous messages began appearing. "Let sleeping dogs lie," read one. Others arrived in the podcast inbox. "This story isn't yours to tell," but Tanya didn't stop. She knew if she stopped now, the truth would stay buried forever. Then something unexpected happened. During a live virtual discussion, a man named Marcus Lee, a former maintenance worker at the community center, stepped forward, his face hidden, voice disguised. He admitted he had been on duty the night of the showcase. "I kept quiet for 18 years, he said, "but when I heard the podcast, I knew I couldn't anymore." Marcus revealed that on the night of May 13th, he was called in by a supervisor to fix an auxiliary electrical system near Studio 3 and the storage rooms. "I arrived around 9:50 and worked in the electrical room until close to 11. At one point, I heard someone sprinting down the hallway, not just footsteps. It sounded urgent. When he checked, the hallway was empty, but the back door to the parking lot was ajar. By policy, all exits were supposed to be locked by 10 p.m. Marcus also confirmed seeing a silver truck parked behind Studio 3 near the fence matching Gloria's description. Exactly. When he tried to report it to the shift supervisor, a man named Rick told him, "You better stick to your job." At the time, Marcus doubted himself, but after seeing the doorbell footage released by Tanya's team, he said, "That's the truck, no question." Marcus' testimony opened new questions. Who was Rick the supervisor that night? Why did he silence Marcus? And why had a witness this crucial never been interviewed? After the live stream, Tanya's group shifted tactics. They reached out to a team of digital forensic students from Atlanta University volunteers who offered to reconstruct the scene in 3D. What they found was disturbing the path between Studio 3 and the rear lot led directly to a maintenance dump zone, an area where cell signal is notoriously weak due to interference from a nearby substation. It was the same zone where cameras had gone dark, the same zone no one had searched. This gave real weight to the theory the girls were lured or forced there and taken away by truck. But they needed more than testimony. They needed physical data. That's when an anonymous email arrived. The sender called themselves Echo, claiming to have recordings from the community center's internal communications system, only accessible to technical staff. Echo wrote, "If you're willing to listen, you'll send it, but not to the police." Tanya didn't know if she could trust it. But deep down she felt it. This was a turning point, a flicker of light in the endless dark. And if she didn't reach for it now, it might never come again. 2 weeks after receiving the email from Echo, Tanya opened the first audio file. It was a distorted recording from the internal radio system on the night of May 13, garbled, full of static. But one line was unmistakable. A man's voice said, "Studio 3 all done. Lights off. Rear access open." Then came a long silence, followed by a faint metallic clank, like a heavy door closing. Tanya listened to it dozens of times, noting every detail. Who was the voice? And why was there even a covert communication system in a community center? Echo sent 2 more files. One was access data from the keycard system for Studio 3 that night. Only one person had clearance between 10 and 11:30 CP. Rick, that name again. Rick the supervisor who stopped Marcus from reporting the silver truck. Rick who didn't appear in any official personnel records under a full name or background. Tanya enlisted a cybersecurity student to trace back through the center's archived HR system. What they found stunned the entire group. Rick was Richard Dorsey, a man previously investigated for harassment while working at a private church in Savannah in 1998. The case was quietly dropped. 2 years later, he surfaced in Waycross as a temp worker at the community center. No one knew how he got hired. His file contained no background screening. The revelation shook everyone. Tanya shared the information publicly on the blog. Just 1 day later, a Fair Right forum posted an anonymous article accusing her of smearing an innocent man. Tanya's email was bombarded with hate. Her phone number leaked. A close friend called with a warning, "Someone's trying to shut you down." But the group pressed on. They decided to track down Rick. A former maintenance worker who once knew him said Richard had moved from Waycross in 2008 to Macon, Georgia. There he worked for a private security firm that staffed large public events. Tanya and 3 others drove to Macon and found the company, but were told Richard had left 3 years ago and didn't leave forwarding info. Just as frustration peaked, a sliver of hope emerged. An Instagram account named RJD Guard had posted a photo at an Atlanta art event the previous month. In it, a man in a security uniform stood beside a group of students. The photo was deleted minutes later, but the team had taken a screenshot. Tanya was sure that's him. "I'll never forget those eyes." The discovery electrified the group. They now had a full name, a face, and a recent lead on a potential suspect. But still, police refused to reopen the case. Tanya wrote in her journal, "We have everything, except power. And power, it seems, is the only thing protecting the guilty." 2 weeks had passed since the revelation about Richard Dorsey, and Tanya still held out hope the police would step in. But nothing happened. 1 week, then 2 silence. Worse, Jamal, a key member of the team, was served a court order demanding the blog post, naming Richard be taken down for defamation of character. The group was stunned. Instead of protection, the truth. Seekers were being threatened with legal action. Tanya began to doubt not just the justice system, but the very narrative she had fought so hard to build. Then Echo sent another file, this one barely 13 seconds long. In it, someone whispers, "It wasn't 5, it was 6. A moment later, a choking sound like someone being cut off. The message sent a jolt through Tanya. 6. Was there a 6th victim? A hidden witness? Someone who was never counted? They re-examined every file from the early case reports. No missing names. But Joni, the volunteer who had helped with stage props, suddenly remembered something. That night, there was a girl backstage who wasn't on the list. Said she was a transfer student. The girl never went on stage, and no one remembered seeing her leave. The team dove into registration records and backstage photos. In one blurry shot behind the curtain was a hooded girl in a black coat. No clear face. No one knew her name. No one knew where she came from. But if it wasn't 5, it was 6 was true. The story was far bigger than anyone imagined. At the same time, a strange envelope appeared at Tanya's doorstep. Inside was a copy of a DNA report, no name, no sender. Scrawled in shaky handwriting, this file was never entered into the system. The test indicated biological evidence from a female one that didn't match any of the 5 known families, meaning there was a 6th, and someone had deliberately hidden it. Tanya sat for hours in front of her wall of notes. Lines, photos, audio transcripts. It all looked like a maze now. For the first time, she wasn't sure where she was heading. The truth she had clung to felt like only the outer shell. Clues began collapsing into each other. If there was a 6th girl, then who was the real target? Had the families truly known everything about their daughters? Or had they all been pulled into a plan no one had seen coming? Tanya tried to stay grounded, but as new revelations began to clash with the old story, the group started to fracture. Some began questioning whether Tanya had misunderstood the evidence, or worse, had shaped it into a more compelling version of the truth. During a Zoom meeting, a student named Malik asked, "How do we know the girl in the black coat wasn't someone who just left early and came back, or an unregistered volunteer?" Tanya pushed back, but the seed of doubt had been planted. And then Echo went silent. The group's encrypted inbox received no more files. Tanya's messages went unanswered. No one knew who Echo really was, and now no one could verify the very source that had driven much of their momentum. A new theory started to spread on Reddit where amateur sleuths followed the case. What if Echo was involved from the beginning and has been steering the investigation off? Of course, Tanya didn't want to believe it. but the doubt gnawed at her night after night. Then came the final blow. Tanya got a call from a lawyer representing the community center. They demanded she take down the podcast entirely, accusing her of defamation and inciting public panic. Tanya exploded in frustration. But her team wavered. One core member stepped away. Another said they needed a break. The sticky note wall in Tanya's small office, once a symbol of truth and determination, now looked like the chaos of someone unraveling. She began having nightmares. In her sleep, she saw Maya walking out of a shadowed hallway. Not as a child, but as a grown woman, staring at her silently. Tanya would wake up gripping the case map in her hands. The truth no longer felt solid. Everything spun in a closed-loop evidence that seemed airtight, yet rested on an untraceable voice. In a moment of despair, Tanya nearly deleted the blog. But then a letter arrived, handwritten from an unknown address in New Orleans. Inside was an excerpt from a journal penned by a girl named Kira. It described the night of the Waycross showcase and detailed the backstage auxiliary room, Studio 3, and a man with eyes that looked like they knew everything, but never said a word. At the bottom, in jagged script, "I've stayed silent long enough. I was the sixth girl, and am still alive." Tanya sat motionless for hours, hands trembling, as she reread the final line of the letter. Part of her wanted to believe. The other part was paralyzed by fear. If Kira was alive, why had she stayed hidden all these years? What had forced her into silence? And the most urgent question, where was Kira now? The next day, Tanya shared the contents of the letter on her blog, keeping the writer's identity and details anonymous. The response was explosive. People who had once doubted her began to return, flooding her inbox with messages of support, even from strangers who had never heard of the case before. A new campaign. Where is Kira swept across Twitter, triggering thousands of shares. Public pressure mounted. 3 major journalists reached out to Tanya asking to dig deeper into the story. But just as momentum surged, silence fell once again. Tanya tried mailing a response to the return address, but the post office informed her the address didn't exist. No one knew where Kira had written from. No phone number, no email, just a voice from the past carrying a promise, still unfinished. Yet Tanya refused to stop. She returned to the Waycross Community Center, the place where it had all begun. The door to Studio 3 was now rotted, the back hallway layered in dust. Still, Tanya stood there for hours. She pressed her hand to the wall, closed her eyes, and whispered, "If you're out there, I'm still listening." In the weeks that followed, the missing stage continued to air, but with no new episodes, only replays of the earlier entries. It was as if Echo had vanished too. Maybe they'd finished what they came to do. Tanya no longer knew if she'd ever uncover the full truth. But what she did know was this: the silence had been broken, and once silence breaks, shop can begin to grow. The photo of the 5 girls on stage, the last known moment before they vanished, was printed in large format and displayed in the center of Waycross Square. Below it, a line suggested by a local high school student, "We're still looking for you." Maybe Tanya would never see Amaya again. Maybe Kira would forever remain a name without a face. But now, at least their story had been told, truthfully, respectfully, and in their own voice. And somewhere in a small room with rain tapping gently on the window, someone out there was still listening. Hope